Hello everyone, and welcome back to English Without Limit, your go-to podcast to improve your English step by step. I'm your host, Julia, and today we're diving into a powerful topic that can truly change the way you speak English. How to speak like a thinker, not a translator. Many English learners fall into the habit of translating everything from their native language into English in their heads before they speak. At first, that seems like the smart thing to do, but actually, it slows you down and makes your speech sound awkward or unnatural. Think about it. If you had to translate every single word or sentence before you spoke, it would feel like you're constantly stuck in a traffic jam. But what if you could skip that step entirely? What if you could think directly in English, just like a native speaker? That's what we're talking about today. You'll learn why thinking in English, not translating, helps you speak more naturally, more quickly, and with much more confidence. And best of all, I'll share practical tips and examples to help you train your brain to think in English every single day. So, get ready, because this could be the shift that changes your entire English journey. Let's begin. So, what does it really mean to speak like a thinker, not a translator? It means that instead of translating every word from your native language into English, you start forming your thoughts directly in English. Here's one way to picture it. When you translate, you act like a middleman between two languages. First, you think of something in your native language. Then, you try to convert it into English before saying it. That process takes time. It can also cause confusion and even lead to grammar or word order mistakes. But when you think directly in English, something amazing happens. You allow your brain to form the idea using English words and grammar. From the start, you don't translate, you just express. Instead of saying in your head, "I want to go to the market," by translating word for word, you begin to simply think the entire idea. In English, your brain gets used to finding the right words and structure naturally. This is exactly how native speakers operate. They're not translating anything. They're just speaking the language they think in. And this leads to fluency, real fluency. The kind where you speak smoothly, with fewer pauses, fewer hesitations, and more confidence. Let me give you a quick example. Imagine a Spanish speaker wants to say, "I'm hungry." In Spanish, it's tengo hambre, which directly translates to "I have hunger." If they translate word for word, they might say that, and it sounds awkward in English. But if they think in English, they just say, "I'm hungry." Simple, natural, clear. That's what speaking like a thinker really means. Over time, this way of thinking helps you sound more natural and feel more comfortable in conversations. Your English becomes a tool you use, not a puzzle you constantly have to solve. Now, let's talk about the real problems learners face when they rely too much on translating. First, it makes your speaking slow. When you're trying to translate every sentence, you pause often. Conversations become slow and even uncomfortable. You might lose your train of thought because you're so focused on finding the right words. Next, grammar mistakes. Different languages follow different sentence patterns. So, when you translate directly, your English might come out sounding strange. For example, you might say, "I very like this," instead of, "I really like this." Why? Because in your native language, that sentence structure might be correct. But in English, it's not. You might also use the wrong vocabulary. You might choose a word that's technically correct in translation, but doesn't fit naturally in English. That can confuse your listener or make you sound less fluent. And finally, there's the emotional side. When you rely on translation, speaking English feels hard. You might feel nervous, stuck, even afraid to speak. You hesitate, you lose confidence, and sometimes you even want to give up. But here's the good news. These issues are not permanent. They can be fixed. In fact, by learning how to think in English, you'll be able to speak faster, more naturally, and with greater confidence than ever before. Let's explore why this method is so powerful. When you think in English, you're helping your brain get used to the language in a more natural, effortless way. You don't pause to translate. You don't second-guess every word. Your speaking becomes faster, smoother, and clearer. You also improve your fluency. Fluency isn't about using fancy words. It's about speaking without long pauses or awkward breaks. And when you think in English, those pauses disappear. Thinking in English also creates stronger connections in your brain. It builds mental shortcuts between your thoughts and the English words that express them. You skip the translation step entirely, and suddenly, you're not just learning English, you're living it. Coming up next, I'll walk you through exactly how to train your brain to think in English with practical, simple tips you can use every day. So stay with me, because the next part is where real transformation begins. This not only helps with speaking, but with listening too. Your brain gets used to how English sounds, how it flows, and how ideas are structured. You understand conversations more easily. And let's not forget about confidence. When you stop translating and start thinking in English, you feel more relaxed. You're not overthinking. You're not doubting every sentence. You're just speaking, naturally. Plus, your English sounds better. Your sentences flow. You sound more like a native speaker, and that makes conversations more enjoyable for you and for the person you're talking to. That's why teachers and experts all over the world say the same thing. Don't just memorize vocabulary. Don't just learn grammar rules. Train yourself to think in English, because that's the foundation of great speaking. Now that we've covered the why, let's move into the how. Coming up next, I'll share simple, practical tips you can use every day to train your brain to think in English. These are strategies you can start using immediately, and you'll be surprised at how quickly they work. You're listening to English Without Limit. I'm Julia, and I'll be right back with some powerful tools to help you think and speak like a fluent English speaker. Welcome back to English Without Limit. I'm Julia, and today we're diving into one of the most effective changes you can make to become more fluent in English: how to think in English instead of translating. Let's begin with the first step: changing your mindset. Stop trying to translate every sentence. Instead, try to focus on the meaning and picture it in your mind in English. This is a powerful shift. For example, when you see something around you, try to describe it in English right away. If you're drinking coffee, think, "I am drinking coffee," instead of translating it from your native language. One excellent technique is to talk to yourself in English. I know, it might feel strange at first, but it really helps your brain get used to forming thoughts in English naturally. You can describe what you're doing, what you're planning to do, or even how you feel. For instance, "Now I am writing an email," or "I feel happy today." Another tip is to use English as much as possible in your daily life. Label objects around your home with their English names. Leave yourself a little notes in English. These simple habits train your brain to stay in English mode, even during small daily tasks. A very effective exercise is to think in English when you're planning your day or making decisions. Instead of thinking, "What should I eat?" in your native language and then translating it, try to think the whole question directly in English. And here's something important. Don't worry about making mistakes. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. You're training your brain to get comfortable with English. Mistakes are part of that journey. Another helpful practice is to listen to English content regularly. Whether it's podcasts, TV shows, or books, this helps you get used to English rhythms, patterns, and phrases. Over time, it becomes easier to think like a native speaker. Here's a powerful technique. While you're listening or reading, pause occasionally and try to predict what comes next in English. This keeps your brain actively engaged in the language instead of passively translating everything. And of course, speak English regularly. Even a few minutes a day can make a big difference. Practice with a tutor, a friend, or even by recording yourself. The more you speak, the more your brain adapts to thinking directly in English. Let's quickly review the key steps. Change your mindset. Talk to yourself in English. Use English in daily life. Listen and read actively. Practice speaking regularly. If you build these habits, speaking like a thinker, not a translator, will become easier and more natural every day. Let me share a couple of real-life examples. I once worked with a student named Maria. She was a Spanish speaker who used to translate everything in her head before speaking English. Her speech was slow, and she struggled to form sentences naturally. But then she committed to thinking in English. She talked to herself, labeled objects around her, and practiced forming thoughts directly in English, without translating. After a few months, her fluency improved dramatically. She spoke with more confidence and ease. Another learner, Ahmed from Egypt, shared that once he stopped translating word by word, he felt less nervous during conversations. He said it was like his brain had finally switched on in English, and suddenly he could understand and respond much faster. I love that phrase, switched on in English. It shows how powerful mindset can be. It's not just about learning grammar or memorizing vocabulary. It's about changing the way your brain processes language. And these changes don't happen overnight. But with consistent practice, anyone can get there. Now let me walk you through a simple example of how thinking in English works during a real conversation. Imagine you're at a coffee shop. Instead of translating what you want to say in your head, you just speak the thoughts directly in English. Here's how it might sound. Hi, can I get a cup of coffee, please? Sure. What kind of coffee would you like? I'd like a latte, please. And can I have it with almond milk? Of course. Anything else? No, that's all. Thank you. See how smooth and natural that feels? When you think in English, you don't pause or hesitate. You just listen, think, and respond. That's the goal. I recommend practicing short dialogues like this daily. Just a few minutes a day will start rewiring your brain for English fluency. Before we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with one quick practical tip. Start small. Don't try to think in long, complicated sentences right away. Begin by naming things around you in English, or thinking about simple actions like, I'm eating, or I'm walking. Little steps like these add up, And remember, practice daily. Even 5 minutes a day can make a noticeable difference over time. So keep going, keep practicing, and soon thinking in English will feel completely natural. Thank you for joining me today on English Without Limit. I hope you found these tips helpful as you work towards speaking like a thinker, not a translator. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow, rate, and share it with your friends. And if you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep practicing, keep growing, and never put limits on your English.